welcome to Railroad Journeys Around the World. In this volume, we'll be looking at the distinctive railroads of Italy. From the mountainous Alps in the far north to the tip of the Italian toe in the south, the whole country benefits from a diverse mixture of railway operations, featuring plenty of activity on both state and private lines. Distinctive Italian action ranges from sophisticated high-speed pendolinos to some rather more sedate and venerable rural services. As well as many interesting passenger operations, we shall also be highlighting the substantial state-operated rail freight network. There's also a look at some very attractive private lines, many of which also see regular freight workings. Finally, there's a chance to see the superb spectacle of Italian mainline steam in action. Italy, with its temperate climate and historic cities, is a popular holiday destination for many people from all over Europe. The country is roughly one-third larger than the UK, with a population of around 57 million people. As we shall see, although there are tremendous regional differences between the more industrialised north and the rural south, Italy still boasts considerable railway activity right across the state network, which is operated by Ferrovie dello Stato, usually referred to as FS. The rail network of northeast Italy centres on the island city of Venice, with numerous routes radiating both inland and along the Adriatic coast to link up with other major centres. The busiest railway approach to Venice is the line from Padova. Among the trains that use this route are numerous international services, as well as domestic intercity trains to Milan, Bologna and Rome. Among the international destinations that can be reached direct from Venice are Brussels, Zagreb and Budapest, and there's even a twice-weekly through train between Venice and Moscow. A lot of freight to and from the ancient heart of Venice is still moved by water, with barges plying constantly to and from the mainland. However, there's also rail and road access along this 5-kilometre long causeway. Both local and long-distance passenger trains can be observed on the causeway, with a good variety of traction and rolling stock types. As in many European countries, push-pull operation is preferred on some short and middle-distance routes, saving Italian railways the time and expense of frequent run-round movements. With trains passing along the causeway at 3 to 4 minute intervals for much of the day, this is one of Italy's busiest stretches of railway. It's not all tourist traffic either. Venice is an important business centre, generating substantial commuter traffic. Typical suburban stock is this ALE 801 unit. The type is nicknamed Fanta because of its orange livery. The busiest long-distance route from Venice is the line to Milan, with a basic hourly interval service throughout the day and extra trains in the morning and evening. For a city that must rank as one of the world's most beautiful, Venice Santa Lucia terminus is something of a disappointment, devoid of any architectural merit. The original station here was destroyed in the Second World War. Perhaps the station's one redeeming feature is that it provides an excellent starting point for visitors to the ancient city. It's possible to catch a water bus from right outside the station and travel in style along the Canal Grande, enjoying breathtaking views of Venice's spectacular architecture. Even the most hardened rail fan must surely find the charm of Venice irresistible, where, for a change, the only engines to be heard are those of barges and water buses. In recent centuries, the main focus of economic activity around Venice has shifted away from the original island, or to be more precise, islands, because there are over 100 of them, to the adjacent mainland. Not surprisingly, it's on the mainland that most of the rail freight activity is to be found. Mestre, just on the landward side of the Venice Causeway, there's a view of industrial Italy that most of the millions of tourists to Venice will only glimpse as their coaches flash close by over the nearby flyover. This huge docks complex at Mestre features an extensive network of freight lines that run for nearly 30 kilometers, serving numerous factories, dry docks and other installations. The whole area bustles with railborne activity. As well as being a traditional port, there's also a considerable amount of shipping being built for deep-sea use, and the majority of the raw materials, including vast amounts of steel plate, are moved around the docks by rail. An important crossroads in northern Italy is Verona, where the Brenner Pass line from Austria joins up with the main east to west route from Milan to Venice. Verona Depot is home to a typical cross-section of the FS locomotive fleet. The official allocation here includes about 80 electrics and about 30 mainline diesels. To the north of Verona is the spectacular Brenner Pass line. This is by far the busiest of the three railway links between Italy and Austria, carrying substantial volumes of international passenger and freight traffic. The Brenner route sees a wide range of electric traction. This train is hauled by a pair of E656 locomotives, known as Caimano, after the alligator on the cab side. The passenger timetable includes a roughly 2-hourly interregional service, calling at all stations, as well as 2-hourly Eurocity trains to and from Munich. The interregional trains are normally formed of push-pull stock. Most of them run between the border station at Granero in the north and either Verona or Bologna in the south. Business at some of the smaller intermediate stations is reasonably brisk, despite competition from the motorway which flanks the railway line almost all the way from Brennero to Verona. Fairly minor location, the size of the station building here at Alla is certainly impressive. The Brenner route is of course an equally important artery for freight traffic. Many of the goods on this well-laden train will have originated in Germany or from even as far north as Scandinavia. The Brenner route is the most northerly main line in Italy and the one that's most likely to see severe weather, although in the winter of 1997 there was a distinct shortage of snow and ice. Two of the most interesting private railway systems in Italy radiate from Ferrara, north of Bologna. They are the Ferrovie Padane, or FP, and the Ferrovia Suzzara Ferrara, the FSF. The FP operates both passenger and freight services over a 53-kilometre long branch line from here at Ferrara to its terminus at Codigoro, not far from the Adriatic coast. Most passenger trains on the branch are formed of multiple unit stock, including these ALN 668 vehicles, which were built in the 1970s and 80s. But the main attraction on the branch for rail fans is undoubtedly this daily pickup freight, principally because the FP uses former Deutsche Bundesbahn motive power. In early 1997, the FP had 3 of these former DB Class 220 locomotives on its books. They were originally built in the late 1950s and were declared surplus by DB in the 1980s. The design will also be familiar to many British enthusiasts, as it was used as the model for the BR Western Region warships. One of the main centres of freight traffic on the line is Ostellato, where traffic is destined for a nearby firm of domestic electrical distributors. Rather amazingly, instead of unloading the wagons in the station goods yard, the firm prefers to carry each wagon on board a road trailer for the final 2 kilometres or so of its journey. After accurately positioning the lorry across the railway track, it takes one man just 10 minutes to complete the loading process by simply winching the wagon slowly onto the trailer. It's a process that most railway administrations would dismiss as a non-starter, but anyone who's seen the efficiency of the Ostellato operation might well wonder why it hasn't been adopted elsewhere. The wagons on this occasion were conveying international traffic, which had entered Italy via the Swiss border crossing at Chiasso. Although this type of operation looks ideal for the intermodal age, it does require very heavy-duty road transport and would not be viable for very long journeys. The end of the line here at Codigoro boasts a spacious but not particularly busy goods yard. On this occasion there's no inward traffic, but just 2 wagons to be picked up. These rather ancient wagons will be conveyed by the FP as far as Ferrara, where they'll join the FS wagon load network. One is bound ultimately for Bari in the south of Italy, and the other is destined for Prato, near Florence. An even more ancient-looking relic at Codigoro is this curious Tobruk diesel locomotive, built originally for use in Libya. The Class 220s, by comparison, look positively modern, although even they are now 40 years old. Little attempt has been made to disguise their German origin. It's an operation that survives only because of support from regional government, helping to keep lorries off local roads. Nevertheless, no doubt questions are being asked about its continued viability, just as they are on many similar lines throughout Europe. In the meantime, the rather nondescript scenery in this part of Italy is amply compensated for by such unusual operations. Another independent railway with an interesting mix of passenger and freight operations is the ACT, based in Reggio Emilia. The busiest ACT line is the 22-kilometre long branch to Sassuolo. Passenger services between Reggio Emilia and Sassuolo are mostly worked by these modern Fiat railcars, based on the FS class 668. But the real attraction of the line is its freight. Each weekday, no less than 8 freight trains are scheduled to run in each direction between Reggio Emilia and the huge bulk handling terminal for the ceramics industry at Dinazzano. For its freight traffic, ACT maintains a varied collection of motive power, including 2 of these former Deutsche Bundesbahn Class 216 locomotives. The bulbous front ends of the 216s have earned them the nickname Lolos. They were originally built by Krupp in 1960. With 8 freights a day in each direction, and with passenger trains to fit in as well, the passing loops at 3 of the intermediate stations are well used. The ACT motive power fleet also includes 2 of these Class 122 locomotives, supplied new by the Italian firm IMPA in 1989. The livery is identical to the style used by FS on many of its modern electric locomotives. The reason why there are such huge volumes of freight traffic in what looks like a rural backwater is that this is the biggest tile manufacturing centre in Europe. In fact, some 30% of total world production of ceramic tiles comes from factories around Dinozzano. Extensive loading and unloading facilities here at Dinozzano were opened in 1985. The main inward traffics are sand from Sardinia and kaolin from several parts of Europe, including France, Germany, and even occasionally Cornwall. Shunting operations are performed by one of the railway company's 4 Class 850-080 shunters, all acquired second-hand from Germany. With both siding space and suitable rolling stock in tight supply, it's essential for wagons to be emptied and reformed into departing trains as quickly as possible. The Adriatic resort of Ancona lies on the electrified main line between Bologna and Bari. Ancona itself is an important port with railway connections for both passenger and freight traffic. Typical traction for an Adriatic Coast Express is this E444R electric. The line was originally single track, but has been doubled in recent years to cope with rising volumes of overnight freight and summertime passenger traffic. Ancona station has been the victim of many earthquakes and has had to be successively repaired over the years. As elsewhere in Italy, the platforms are impressively long and could easily take a 20-coach train. Several times a day, one of the local push-pull trains from Pesaro to Ancona is extended over the short branch line to Ancona docks. On the outward journey, the train has the driving trailer at the front and the loco at the rear. With sharp curves and open level crossings, speeds on the branch are low. The branch has been retained because there are still ferry connections to Greece and the former Yugoslavia. Waiting in the maritime station is an E424 electric, a type introduced in the 1940s that's still commonly used on local services such as this. The Class 424s are a straightforward Bobo design, with 2 pairs of powered axles, rather than the 3 pairs of axles that are characteristic of many Italian electrics. Although some of the older Class 424s have been withdrawn, a considerable number have been equipped for push-pull operation and will be retained for the foreseeable future. Originally, the 424s had a luggage compartment in the middle, but this has now been welded up. Many Many features of the 424s are shared with other Italian loco designs, especially with the 6-axle E636 class, which is basically a larger version of the same thing. The distinctive grey, red and orange livery, known as navetta, is standard for all push-pull locos. Crisscrossing the hills to the southwest of Ancona is an interesting network of electric and diesel work lines, all owned by the state railway company FS. The principal route from Ancona across to Fabriano and eventually on to Rome leaves the Adriatic coastline here at Falconara. It's a generously proportioned station for a small town. Despite being single track, the line between Ancona and Fabriano is well used by intercity, interregional and local trains. This E656 is typical traction for an interregional train. Push-pull operation makes sense where the journey length is relatively short. This part of Italy contains much impressive scenery, but has the less attractive aspect of being rather prone to earthquakes. In fact, the whole mountainous spine of Italy, from Sicily to Trieste, lies on a geological fault line. Perhaps surprisingly, many local services between Ancona and Fabriano are locomotive-powered, while longer distance interregional workings between Ancona and Rome may produce these ALE 601 electric multiple units, nicknamed Marco Polos. The line via Fabriano is also well used by freight between the port of Ancona and Rome. As in most European countries, the majority of freight workings in Italy are wagon load services, and although FS would like to reap the advantages of train load operation where possible, there seems to be no immediate threat to the wagon load network. In the first half of 1997, FS carried a record tonnage of freight traffic, nearly 10% up on the previous year. The other branch from Fabriano, heading back towards the coast to Civitanova, Marche, sees a rather more frequent passenger service, averaging out at one train every 2 hours. Both branches are worked by these Class 668 railcars, a standard design which can be seen on secondary duties throughout the FS network. Survivors of the very first FS diesel type, the Class 341, are still in use on the independent FCU line from Perugia to Terni. The traffic here is imported coal, which is moved overnight from Ancona docks to this yard at Marciano. In recent years, the FCU has been de-electrified because the catenary has worn out, and all passenger services are now formed by these Fiat diesel railcars. Because there are no volunteer-run private steam lines in Italy, Italian rail fans have to rely on FS to provide the motive power and the organisation for steam specials. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to find out advance information concerning steam specials, although some details are listed in the full FS timetable. One UK company that has organised several successful steam charters is along different lines. Starting from Ancona on the Adriatic coast, the steam special ran south before turning inland to its base at Fabriano, using 740-296, one of 50 surviving members of this once numerous class of 280 freight locos. The next day, sister loco 740-160 was used to explore the quiet branch line from Pergola back to Fabriano. The big advantage in travelling with organised groups of rail fans is that you won't run into the usual problems concerning railway photography at stations. Accommodation in Italy is plentiful in most areas, particularly along the coast and in the big cities. Although many of the hotels are somewhat drab, the reception is universally warm. In the hills and off the beaten track, small hotels still offer particularly good value. There's usually plenty of local choice for eating out, ranging from simple, inexpensive open-air cafes to costly, sophisticated city centre restaurants. The scenery and roads vary enormously from the drier and more rural south to the busy northern parts, with their sophisticated motorway links across the Alps. Italians really love their mobile phones, and reception, often boosted by small roadside solar-powered transmitters, is usually excellent, even in rural areas. Car hire is good value, and although driving standards in the rural south are somewhat unconventional, Italian driving in general doesn't really deserve its poor reputation, and this shouldn't be seen as too much of a problem. One big advantage in touring Italy is that, as well as the rail network, there's so much else of enormous interest to see. Although the popular tourist destinations of Rome, Florence, Naples and Venice are a natural draw, there's plenty of historic value to see all over Italy. Venice is perhaps the most different and deservedly popular tourist attraction, but by carefully planning your visit here, and in particular by using rail, then the frequent water buses, it's possible to avoid the worst problems of visitor car parking, which is virtually non-existent and very expensive. Getting around by rail is relatively easy. All the services, including private lines, are in the full timetable, which even includes a version on computer disk. So, to sum up, be discreet in your railway photography, relax and enjoy the wonderful weather and glorious pastimes. One of Italy's premier main lines is the south to north route from Naples up to Rome and then onwards via Arezzo to Firenze. This route forms part of the core network of Italian high-speed passenger services. The city of Naples has an intricate network of urban and suburban lines, all of which are electrified on the standard Italian system of 3000 volts DC. There are two separate railway routes between Naples and Rome, this one flanking the Mediterranean coast, which is the main passenger line, and another one further inland, mainly for freight and secondary passenger services. This coastal route was one of the first lines in the country to have a high-speed passenger service, going right back to the 1920s. Although by today's standards, some sections are hardly suitable for high-speed running, and plans are well advanced now for a brand new line linking the cities of Naples and Rome. The majority of trains between Naples and Rome are conventionally locomotive hauled. They include a mixture of intercity, interregional and semi-fast services. Although FS adopted a regular interval timetable on many of its routes in the late 1980s, the overlaying of different routes and service types means that the overall pattern on main lines is far from regular. Between Naples and Rome, the basic semi-fast service runs hourly, but the timings of interregional and intercity trains are much less predictable. Rome has a rail network as well developed as you'd expect to find in a major European capital, except that there are fewer suburban passenger routes than in comparable French or German cities. Railways came late to this part of Italy. The first line out of Rome wasn't opened until 1856. Electrification reached Rome in the 1920s and was gradually extended to cover virtually all main and suburban lines. The present-day Roma Termini station was completed in 1951. It handles all the mainline passenger traffic to and from the capital, as well as some suburban traffic. Unfortunately, the platforms are a no-go area for photographers. Rome is of course packed with historical interest, with many attractions within easy reach of Termini station. The trams provide a particularly pleasant and practical way of getting around. A walk through the streets of central Rome will reveal masterpieces of virtually every architectural age, from the world-famous Colosseum, commissioned by Emperor Vespasian in AD 72, to less well-known but equally impressive sites, such as Trajan's Column. And the Palatine, the former imperial residence of Augustus. The railway between Rome and Florence again consists of two separate routes. This classic line for freight and secondary passenger traffic, and a much newer Direttissimo high-speed line. The line via Arezzo and Tarantola today carries the majority of freight workings linking Rome with the industrial north of Italy. Intermodal services are increasing rapidly as a more cost-effective alternative to the traditional wagon load. The line via Arezzo carries a roughly hourly local passenger service, although this is less significant than the huge quantities of freight that pass this way. As might be expected, older brown liveried locos like this E636 are much in evidence. Because of government pressure to cut costs, FS has inevitably been forced to withdraw over 1,000 local train services from its timetable. One of the problems faced by FS is that it currently has the poorest rolling stock productivity in Europe. Doubtless, one way of cutting costs would be to replace shorter distance loco-hauled workings, like this one passed in Castiglione Fiorentino, with multiple units. However, there seems to be no immediate intention to do this. The Direttissimo between Rome and Florence was the first of the new generation of Italian high-speed lines. The 300-kilometre long route was opened in 1992. The Direttissima has no intermediate stations, but there are connections to and from the parallel classic route for use by some intercity trains. By far the majority of trains on the Direttissima are high-speed units, for which FS has become so well known. Marketed rather confusingly under the name of Eurostar Italia, FS operates an average of 2 high-speed train services each hour between Florence and Rome. These ETR 500 units take just 1 hour 35 minutes to complete the 318-kilometre journey. That's an average speed of 200 kilometers an hour. The only drawback for the passenger is the payment of a hefty supplement. 4 diesel-worked cross-country lines converge at Rocchetta San Antonio, about 150 kilometers inland from Bari. All 4 lines are operated by FS. The line from Rocchetta San Antonio to Potenza passes through particularly attractive upland countryside in one of the most sparsely populated regions of Italy. The train service is provided entirely by rail cars, running at approximately hourly intervals. FS railcar stock consists of single cars, which can either run independently, as here, or with a trailer or second motor car attached. These Class 668 vehicles are among the latest in a long line of Italian railcar designs. FS ordered its first batch of railcars as long ago as the 1930s, helping to cut costs on lightly used lines such as this. The railcars used on this line are based at Foggia. Heading north from Catanzaro Lido is the FS line to Sibari, still diesel-worked but connecting with electric trains on the Cosenza to Metaponto route. Local trains between Catanzaro Lido and Sibari usually produce Class 343 haulage, a pleasing, if rather surprising change from the usual rail cars. The line is never far from the coast and passes through pleasant, undulating scenery as it skirts the Marchesato hills. The Class 343 design was introduced in 1967 and a total of 75 were built. The locomotive body is unusually short, only just over 13 metres, due to the use of monomotor bogies. Recently, withdrawals of Class 343s have started. A slightly more powerful diesel is the Class 445, visually similar to the 343s. On the Catanzaro-Lido to Sibari line, the 445s tend to be in charge of longer distance trains, including through services between Reggio di Calabria and Bari. The 445s were introduced in 1974, and a total of 150 were built. The livery style on most D445 locomotives is this predominantly grey and orange scheme, which indicates push-pull capability. The majority of the class was fitted for push-pull operation from new, even though the facility is limited to certain routes. A major innovation with this particular locomotive class was the fitting of electric train heating equipment. With earlier diesel types, the use of a separate generator van is necessary to provide heating. Common with all FS mainline diesels, the D445s have electric transmission. They were built in two distinct batches, with the first 35 entering service in the mid-1970s and the remaining 115 following on during the 1980s. Both the 343s and the 445s have a maximum service speed of 130 km an hour, although this is rarely reached in deepest Calabria. This non-electrified route along the Adriatic coast is used by substantial quantities of freight to and from the southern part of Calabria, routed this way in preference to using the busier electrified route on the Mediterranean side of the peninsula. This particular working has originated at Bari and is bound for the port of Rossano, some 60 kilometres north of Reggio Calabria. It will have to take a circuitous route right around the southern tip of Calabria. The southernmost tip of Calabria is served by the FS main line to Villa San Giovanni, connecting with train ferries to Sicily, and also by two independent lines belonging to the Ferrovie della Calabria, or FC. To the south of Villa San Giovanni, the FS line continues to skirt the Calabrian peninsula, more often than not separated from the sea by holiday resorts. The main significance of Villa San Giovanni in railway terms is the train ferry connection from here to Sicily. FS operates direct intercity trains to and from Sicily via the train ferry, serving places as far afield as Rome and Turin. Freight traffic is equally significant, with constant activity day and night as traffic makes its way to and from the island. The ferry service itself is owned by the state railway system, and ships sail hourly, although not all services carry trains. Such is the volume of rail traffic that FS is now seeking funding to build a fixed link between Villa San Giovanni and Messina. But for the time being, the ferries do a highly efficient job, the crossing only taking about 55 minutes. The Italian island of Sicily has its own extensive railway network, with tremendous variety and interest both in terms of scenery and of passenger and freight operations. Freight services tend to be the most highly concentrated on the section between Messina and Palermo, although there are also daily services along the scenic mountain route through Enna to Agrigento. The majority of the system is electrified, but passenger services in the far west rely mainly on railcars for the majority of their needs. As with the rest of the Italian mainline system, the railways of Sicily are well worth exploring, particularly away from the more crowded coastal resorts. We do hope that you've enjoyed this look at the unique railroads of this fascinating country. Bye for now. As in many European countries, push-pull operation is preferred on some short and middle-distance routes, saving Italian railways the time and expense of frequent run-round movements. With trains passing along the causeway at 3 to 4 minute intervals for much of the day, this is one of Italy's busiest stretches of railway. It's not all tourist traffic either. Venice is an important business centre, generating substantial commuter traffic. Typical suburban stock is this ALE 801 unit. The type is nicknamed Fanta because of its orange livery. The busiest long-distance route from Venice is the line to Milan, with a basic hourly interval service throughout the day and extra trains in the morning and evening. For a city that must rank as one of the world's most beautiful, Venice Santa Lucia terminus is something of a disappointment, devoid of any architectural merit. The original station here was destroyed in the Second World War. Perhaps the station's one redeeming feature is that it provides an excellent starting point for visitors to the ancient city. It's possible to catch a water bus from right outside the station and travel in style along the Canal Grande, enjoying breathtaking views of Venice's spectacular architecture. Even the most hardened rail fan must surely find the charm of Venice irresistible, where, for a change, the only engines to be heard are those of barges and water buses. In recent centuries, the main focus of economic activity around Venice has shifted away from the original island, or to be more precise, islands, because there are over 100 of them, to the adjacent mainland. Not surprisingly, it's on the main sophisticated high-speed pendolinos to some rather more sedate and venerable rural services. As well as many interesting passenger operations, we shall also be highlighting the substantial state-operated rail freight network. There's also a look at some very attractive private lines, many of which also see regular freight workings. Finally, there's a chance to see the superb spectacle of Italian mainline steam in action. Italy, with its temperate climate and historic cities, is a popular holiday destination for many people from all over Europe. The country is roughly one-third larger than the UK, with a population of around 57 million people. As we shall see, although there are tremendous regional differences between the more industrialised north and the rural south, Italy still boasts considerable railway activity right across the state network, which is operated by Ferrovie dello Stato, usually referred to as FS. The rail network of northeast Italy centres on the island city of Venice, with numerous routes. Hello and welcome to Railroad Journeys Around the World. In this volume, we'll be looking at the distinctive railroads of Italy. From the mountainous Alps in the far north to the tip of the Italian toe in the south, the whole country benefits from a diverse mixture of railway operations, featuring plenty of activity on both state and private lines. Distinctive Italian action ranges from radiating both inland and along the Adriatic coast to link up with other major centres. The busiest railway approach to Venice is the line from Padova. Among the trains that use this route are numerous international services, as well as domestic intercity trains to Milan, Bologna and Rome. Among the international destinations that can be reached direct from Venice are Brussels, Zagreb and Budapest, and there's even a twice-weekly through train between Venice and Moscow. A lot of freight to and from the ancient heart of Venice is still moved by water, with barges plying constantly to and from the mainland. However, there's also rail and road access along this 5-kilometre long causeway. Both local and long-distance passenger trains can be observed on the causeway, with a good variety of traction and rolling stock types.